week's live stream, the status update on the Russo-Ukrainian war. Normally here, I give you 3 things to look out for the next week. If you're new to this channel, my name is Connor Klein. I'm an expert in international relations, been based here in Ukraine for many years. So I'm going to give you a bit more nuanced and insightful analysis in the happenings of the Russo-Ukrainian war from someone who's here on the ground about half the time. So the first big thing to look out for is the global event, I guess we can call it now, war between the US and US, Israel and Iran. And yesterday saw the supreme leader of Iran assassinated, Khamenei, and there were obviously going to be huge reverberations around the world, not just in the region. We also saw other countries being attacked by Iran, most notably I saw in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. So definitely we're going to see a lot of consequences to the US's action. On the whole, I think this conflict will be a net positive for Ukraine's position as opposed to Russia's position in the Russo-Ukrainian war, since Iran is a stalwart ally of Russia that's been helping them, especially with the kamikaze drone production, the Shahed drones. The analysis is overall that Russia's kind of extracted most of the value from that relationship with respect to drone intel, because now they basically produce and design their own drones and update them. Maybe they're even further ahead than the Iranians. However, losing a key, or at least important ally globally, will weaken Russia's position and future collaboration that could be beneficial in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Also, it doesn't bode well when we see a domino effect of being allied with Russia. We see Maduro captured, well, basically abducted by the US. We've seen Assad fall in Syria. Now we see Khamenei assassinated. So it doesn't bode well for being in the alliance with Russia, as opposed to, say, the US or with Europe or with Ukraine. And it will divert some of Russia's attention and resources. Most probably, embarrassingly for Vladimir Putin, we have seen the US capture the president of Venezuela, and then the leader of Iran has been assassinated, well, by the US in conjunction with Israel. Russia and Vladimir Putin have planned a similar decapitation strike if Vladimir Zelensky had not left, if he were not to leave Ukraine back in 2022, which, as we know, he did not leave, and they were unsuccessful. And that shows the huge gap between capability between the US on the one hand and its allies, and Russia and its allies on the other. It makes one wonder what would have been the outcome of the Russo-Ukrainian war and how quickly it would have lasted if the US had actually thrown its weight and its capability behind Ukraine completely at the beginning in 2022, and especially now that Donald Trump is in the White House and not really doing much to help Ukraine overall, and actually basically advocating on behalf of Russia that they should just give away territory that Russia doesn't even control, because they will be somehow be able to get a great deal, whatever phrasing Donald Trump wants to put on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is actually connected to that, but just kind of making a segue here. It is the revelation by the head of the president's office in Ukraine, Kirilo Budanov, who used to be until recently the head of Ukrainian intelligence, that Russia is willing to accept American security guarantees. I'm doing the air quotes because if you know your Ukrainian recent history, we had the Budapest Memorandum back in 1994, where Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan all actually gave up their nuclear arsenals. Whether they have full control over those or not, it's kind of a bit of a semantic argument, because those nuclear weapons were on the territory of Ukraine. They gave them to Russia, as well as some strategic bombers that actually Russia used to attack them then in 2022. So at the time, Ukraine, along with the other 2 countries that were mentioned, Kazakhstan and Belarus, they received security assurances. Assurances, that was the word used in the Budapest Memorandum. Now, was there any actual value to those security assurances? No, they were absolutely worth diddly squat. So this is the big question. Are US security guarantees, will actually be written as a guarantee, and will it be credible to, number one, deter Russia? And if Russia is not deterred, are they actually going to take action to protect Ukrainian sovereignty going forward? I personally remain extremely skeptical with Donald Trump in the White House, whether if Ukraine agreed to this, whatever the settlement happened to be, and they were relying on the US security guarantee, that, number one, Vladimir Putin wouldn't test it because he wanted to find out if this time it's actually a real guarantee or not, obviously in a way that wouldn't provoke the US to hit him so hard. And with Donald Trump there, I think that Vladimir Putin was making, in that scenario, quite a good bet that the US wouldn't actually really guarantee Ukraine's security going forward. However, hopefully we're not in that situation that gets tested. And I find it interesting that Budanov is the one who has said this. This suggests a few things, that Russia is starting to look at a scenario where they would have to stop the fighting without achieving their strategic objectives. That's how I interpret it. Of course, Russia may demand that Ukraine withdraw from territory in exchange for the US giving these security guarantees. That would be basically, in my opinion, a trap for Ukraine. They would actually withdraw out of secure fortified positions, presumably in the Donbass region, which actually give them some sort of assurance, guarantee, whatever we're going to use, that Russia cannot advance forward, at least not very quickly. They can advance slower than a snail. Whilst if they were to withdraw that then possibly they could end up with the Russians being on the other side of those fortifications without actually having to fight past them if they just violated the agreement and the US didn't step in to remove the Russians from that territory. So definitely a very interesting development, and there may be many things behind it. We have seen, I guess, look out for this 13. What happens domestically in Russia? Because again, they have high inflation, a recession in the economy, high interest rates. They are burning through their liquid reserves to keep the war going. They have now a manpower issue because they are losing more soldiers than they can actually recruit every month. And we have seen them clamp down on the use of Telegram most recently, which could be a very important way for opponents of Vladimir Putin, or protesters, or people who are unhappy with his decisions, to communicate and organize, should that be the case in the near future. So they have limited Telegram in much the same way that they've limited YouTube. There are ways around it. You need to be a little bit more tax heavy than the average person to do that. It's not actually that difficult at the moment, but they are moving towards forcing people onto a messenger that they can basically eavesdrop and view everything. And the big question which I posed last week is whether this is in preparation for potential thwarting a coup d'etat amongst the elite, who are very unhappy about the fact that they are basically going to be fighting over a smaller pie in Russia, or is it in preparation for a potential general mobilization? They had one back in autumn of 2022. It was extremely unpopular in Russia and actually led to over 1 million Russian men leaving the country as a result. They recruited 300,000, but they lost 1 million Russian men who left the country. Maybe some of those have come back, maybe others have left in the meantime, but that could be the next big issue. The other thing is, like, as I alluded to, if Russia actually goes for a pause in the fighting, then they may have an issue with a political faction of ultranationalists that may try to overthrow Vladimir Putin, because they will be like, hey, you're a complete loser, you failed to achieve your strategic aims, and now you pause the fighting. Ukraine will do what they did successfully with after the Minsk II agreements were written down and agreed. The fact that they managed to prepare and arm themselves better and move forward militarily quicker than the Russian Federation was able to do in the same amount of time, that there was this, well, not pause in the fighting exactly, but really the fighting died down a lot. So they would be worried about that scenario. So very interesting times ahead. We've also seen that there are supposed to be more talks that Budanov had alluded to, apparently scheduled for the United Emirates. They're supposed to be in the United Arab Emirates. However, having seen that both Abu Dhabi and Dubai were struck by Iran in the last 24 hours, I don't think they'll be going ahead there. If they do go ahead, they'll probably be somewhere else. So drop your questions down below. Let me know your thoughts on the current state of the Russo-Ukrainian war. I will make some content here in this channel about the ramifications, as far as we can predict, from this point, which is day 2 of this US/Israeli war. I think I've forgotten the name of what Donald Trump is calling the operation. Is this something about wrath? And I forgot. I must look that up again, see what name he's giving this war. But I guess we will see more things unfold. However, it is important to note that it's hard to predict exactly all the different permutations and different consequences of this war for both Russia and Ukraine. However, it looks like just the fact that Iran is in a huge difficulty, just had its supreme leader, assassinated overnight, that another Russian ally looks like they are going to lose their very strong grip and power that they've had for basically my entire lifetime. And that would be something that would be celebrated here in Ukraine. But I will make a more detailed video either probably tomorrow once the dust has settled a little bit with respect to where we are in this new war in the Middle East, giving you some food for thought about the possible consequences for the two actors in the war in this country, Ukraine. So on that point, I will say, do побачення. We'll have a live stream, probably a lot longer one this evening, that will deal with some geopolitics. Basically, my idea was to discuss the 4th anniversary of the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. That will be on my lifestyle channel, so look forward to seeing you there with your questions and your comments later on this evening. So, до побачення, слава Україні, до перемоги.